In 2016, I was a 15-year-old on the cusp of my last Halloween trick-or-treating adventure. Determined to make it memorable, I embarked on a multi-day plan of celebration. My mom was usually pretty laid back, but she was thrilled about the idea, so my Halloween extravaganza rapidly evolved into something grander. On the eve of Halloween, the plan was simple: a sleepover with my buddies, Davis and Zach. The next day, Halloween, we'd take to the streets for some trick-or-treating fun. It was going to be just the three of us. Then, as the night rolled in, it was all about a sleepover with my girlfriend, Amber. This story spans both those nights, and I'll do my best to recount it as vividly as it unfolded. Our recently renovated basement had been transformed into a man cave, and it was the perfect setting for our festivities. However, the basement harbored a long, dimly lit hallway leading to the man cave. Curiously, the hallway's light switch had a mind of its own, rendering it inoperable, giving it an eerie, unsettling vibe. For that night, that peculiar ambiance was precisely what we wanted. The clock in the basement read 11 p.m. as we wrapped up our second movie of the night, the original Scream. The following item on our movie marathon was Paranormal Activity. None of us had seen it before, which was exactly why I'd chosen it. As the movie played, we watched with bated breath, fully immersed in the suspense. But barely 30 seconds into the movie, I hit pause. The motion-activated light in the backyard suddenly blazed to life. Its piercing glow illuminated the room, shattering the eerie atmosphere we had carefully cultivated. I waited patiently, giving the light 30 seconds to complete its cycle before unpausing the movie. To my growing frustration, the light flicked on again within 30 seconds. The cycle repeated itself, and my friends began to question the inexplicable source of these bizarre interruptions. Confused and somewhat annoyed, we decided to investigate. Davis and Zach joined me as we ascended the stairs to get a better view of the backyard. However, by the time we reached the back door, the motion-activated light had gone off, plunging us into darkness. We waited for some time, but nothing out of the ordinary occurred. We decided to return to the man cave and call it a night for the movie, opting for a quieter hangout on our phonies. 2 hours later, everyone had fallen asleep, leaving only me engrossed in my phony. Then, the familiar glow of the motion-activated light flooded the room for the 4th time that night. Exhaustion had me dismissing it as just another juvenile prank, likely orchestrated by a group of kids. But the more I thought about it, the less that explanation seemed plausible. We were in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, and this wasn't adding up. With an uneasy feeling gnawing at me, I decided to check the backyard one last time. As I expected, I found nothing, and so I gave up, returning to the man cave. I was ready to call it a night. The next night arrived in the blink of an eye, and I found myself with a bag full of candy, a tangible reminder that my childhood era of trick-or-treating was coming to an end. But I refused to be sentimental about it. Instead, I resolved to make the most of this special night. However, the unnerving events of the previous night still weighed heavily on my mind. I grappled with whether or not to share this strange experience with Amber. She was easily frightened, and I didn't want to taint our evening with a spooky tale. It was a night for celebration, after all. As we visited one of the final houses on our Halloween route, our night took a chilling turn. Amber let out a piercing scream, claiming that a rock had struck her. In response, I spun around, only to spot a man in a clown mask lurking about 15 feet behind us. This encounter took place during the unsettling clown epidemic, and the man was clad in a clown mask with regular clothes underneath. Frustration boiled inside me, as it was clear this wasn't just a teenager in costume. The figure was a grown man, and my unease escalated. We decided to call it a night, skipping the remaining houses due to heightened anxiety. We returned to my house, where my friends were picked up, leaving only Amber and me to sift through our candy on the den floor. She requested that we watch a movie, and so I decided to finish Paranormal Activity later that night. The scene in the movie was etched into my mind, but then, as if on cue, the screen abruptly went black. The dim lights in the man cave were snuffed out, leaving us in darkness. Amber and I exchanged concerned glances. The abrupt power outage sent shivers down my spine. It was an unsettling experience, as the power rarely ever went out in our house, except during storms. A quick check of my weather app confirmed that it was a clear night, without a hint of rain. I told Amber to stay put in the cave while I ventured out to investigate, but something gnawed at my stomach, a sense of unease, an overwhelming fear, and a haunting déjà vu from the previous night washed over me. With Amber's safety in mind, I decided against further investigation outside. However, as I turned back, heading for the safety of our home, the eerie sensation of being watched grew stronger. I felt a tightening knot in my stomach. My anxiety reached new heights, and I was about to break out into a cold sweat. I reached the back door and passed by the motion-activated light, which stubbornly refused to turn on. About 5 feet from the generator, I heard the snap of a twig, followed by an eerie silence. Amber and I turned our attention toward the distant forest, trying to pierce the veil of darkness. In the quiet, all we heard were the crickets, but we felt the unsettling sensation of being watched. Tension coiled within me, and I felt a potent sense of dread, the kind that makes your stomach churn. With apprehension, we hesitated, waiting for something to happen. Then it did. The motion-activated light suddenly burst to life, flooding the backyard with an eerie glow. The man in the clown mask stood, sinister and unmoving, just beyond the veil of darkness. Time seemed to stretch, trapping us in a grotesque dance of fear. Our eyes met, and the stranger leaped forward, sprinting toward us. Our adrenaline surged, and in a split second, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. I ran for the back door and slammed it shut after Amber, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. We made it to the man cave, hiding behind the bar in the corner, our breaths shallow and tremulous. Darkness enveloped us, and in those nerve-wracking moments, all we could hear was silence. Minutes crawled by, like hours. Must have been around 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. The suspense was unbearable. My girlfriend was breathing heavily, her anxiety palpable. I had to cover her mouth to muffle the sounds. We remained hidden, crouched in the shadows while our hearts raced like a freight train. Then came the sound I had dreaded the most. The basement door creaking open. The chilling sound of footsteps reverberated through the basement. They echoed down the hallway, each step growing closer. My girlfriend's breathing grew louder, and I knew we were running out of time. All the horror stories I'd ever heard about strangers breaking into homes flashed before my eyes. I knew I had to protect Amber at all costs. With trembling hands, I grasped a beer bottle from behind the bar, clutching it tightly. My heart was in my throat, my body tense and ready for action. I prepared myself mentally to fight, if it came to that. The room remained silent for what felt like an agonizingly long time. Every nerve in my body was screaming, urging me to do something. I could sense the stranger, somewhere out there in the darkness, just beyond our hiding place. Then it happened. Sirens blared from outside, a piercing symphony of relief that shattered the ominous silence. It was the perfect distraction, a fleeting moment of opportunity. With heart pounding, I took action. In an instant, I made a split-second decision. I sprang up from our hiding place, determined to confront this terrifying stranger. The man was only a few feet away, still cloaked in darkness, when I launched my attack. My arm swung, the beer bottle hurtling towards the masked face, but fate had a cruel twist in store for me. I tripped and fell to the ground after I'd swung. As I tumbled, the bottle connected with the intruder's head. His movement barely faltered, his mask obscuring his reaction. I realized this was a risky and reckless decision because he was probably going to the upper floors after hearing the sirens. In that tense moment, I knew I had to make a quick decision. However, as I looked up, still scrambling to my feet, I met a chilling sight. It was the same man in the clown mask, the same figure who had unnerved us earlier. I couldn't tell whether my swing had made a difference, or if his mask had somehow absorbed the blow. At that critical juncture, it seemed he was about to make his way back upstairs, apparently having heard the sirens. My mind raced with fear and the realization that our lives were hanging by a thread. But what happened next was even more shocking. The stranger, this ominous figure in the clown mask, stared down at me as I lay on the ground, my legs numb, my pulse pounding. My heart leaped into my throat as I grappled with the chilling reality that my life could potentially end right then and there. My brain buzzed with a primal fight-or-flight response. My panic was palpable, and I was about to shout at Amber to run for her life. As I lay on the ground, struggling to get back on my feet, my legs felt numb and a sense of impending doom hung heavy in the air. But just as I was on the brink of screaming for Amber to flee, the strange man in the clown mask acted. He lingered for a moment, as if deliberating his next move, his masked face an enigmatic mask of terror. And then, abruptly, he sprinted up the stairs. The basement door slammed shut above us, and we were left with an eerie silence. I raced up the stairs to unlock the door for the police, my heart pounding with fear and uncertainty. The sirens still blared outside, and in my desperation, I informed the officers that the intruder had fled into the backyard. You're probably wondering if the police captured him. The answer, regrettably, is no. Somehow, despite the officers' efforts, the man in the clown mask had managed to evade capture. To this day, I can't set foot in that man cave alone without being overwhelmed by anxiety. My friends and I would hang out at Amber's place for a while after that. The inexplicable events of that Halloween night remain etched in my memory, forever haunting my thoughts. It was a chilling and unforgettable experience. I can't help but reflect on the night when I looked up from the ground and saw the masked stranger staring down at me as I flailed and struggled to regain my footing.